Welcome to Atmoseeker. Today we're going to look at ice caverns. Hey everyone, my name's Sebastian and welcome to Atmoseeker, your place for props, terrain, and creating an inspiring atmosphere for your tabletop role-playing games. In this episode, I'm going to be showing how I made these ice cavern dioramas for use in online games and for creating unique layouts at just your regular game table with other sets of terrain. Inspired by Rime and the Frost Maiden, the new Wizards of the Coast adventure that's recently been released, the idea with this diorama set is that it can create interesting layouts and is slightly modular, that you could use different camera angles to create a sense of immersion and atmosphere when running your online games. You can also use this backdrop and reconfigure it for a more conventional tabletop setting as pieces of terrain. For instance, here I'm using some dungeon tiles and some larger pieces of monsters. So let's hit the crafting table where I show a few of the materials, painting, and sculpting techniques that I've used to create this thing. So to get started with this build, I'm just using some of the materials I have on hand. For instance, here I'm using EVA foam and foam core board that I'm going to stick together with hot glue. The reasoning for the EVA foam is it's going to add some extra weight and thickness to the bottom, as well as having some non-slip properties. I've made 3 sections, 2 which are 6 by 6 inches, with the center longer one 6 by 12 inches, and they have a height of about 5 inches. Now just using some packing foam or expanded polystyrene to kind of fill up the sides of these cave walls. This is just going to be an underlying structure, so it's alright if it's a bit rough. I'm using hot glue to secure it all, and using my fingers to break up the styrofoam into rough, rock-like shapes and layers. On one of the cave sections, I've cut out a cave entrance with some foam core board with the paper removed, and I'm just going to use a pencil to engrave some of these rock-like patterns into it. The idea here is to keep it as flat as possible, so if I wanted to flush it up to another piece of the diorama, it wouldn't get in the way. On the cave floor, where I have some of this foam core board with the paper removed, I'm just using a pencil to etch out the rough pattern and build up the kind of rocky texture of that. I've also used a blade to cut out some of the grooves that I wanted a bit bigger at just kind of a beveled kind of edge. I've also used the nozzle of a hot glue gun at low temperature to cauterize some of the foam at some of the edges and just add a little bit of that texture to some of the flagstone. Now it's time to build up some of the rock walls with some sculptor mold, and I'm going to mix it together with water just to the consistency of runny oatmeal. With an old brush, I'm just going to grab big chunks of sculptor mold and use it to kind of work into the polystyrene that we put on earlier. The idea is with the brush, I'm going to get some subtle brush strokes, maybe towards the end when it's drying, that it's going to have that kind of rock-like texture to it. Time to strengthen it all together with Jeremy's old Black Magic Craft Mod Podge mix. It's a mix of Mod Podge, water, and black acrylic paint. The idea with thinning it with water is that when you brush it on, it's able to seep into all the little nooks and crannies. So not too thin, but not too thick, so that it can still get good coverage. The Mod Podge does give it a bit of a satin finish, so I'm just using some black matte acrylic paint to give it a nice matte finish. Now I'm taking a large brush and using some browns and greys and turquoise greens to just brush on the underlying rock textures that's going to be painted over the snow and ice effects. Alright, so stepping out of my comfort zone here with the airbrush. I've never used one before, so I started here with a Kraken blue. That's just a blue from one of these D&D starting painter sets. And then I just went straight to a white, just thought I'd go dusting with the snow and thought that would be it. But the problem with that is that the build became very desaturated, so to give some more kind of vibrance to it, I got out the Viridian Green and shot it up at like a upward angle to some of the cave walls, and that really helped make that ice pop a lot more. I was really happy how it kind of sunk those colors together. Now I'm just making some icicles for the cave with some hot glue that I'm just going to run along this hot glue mat that I have. For some of the thicker icicles, I'm just going to let that first layer cool and then go over it again with the hot glue. After it cools, I can peel it off and then use the nozzle of a hot glue gun to add some texture to it. Just running it up and down the sides of it, just to make some extra little detail to it. When that's done, just using a dab of hot glue to attach it to the cave wall, and then using the nozzle again to help blend it into the cave wall. For the snow effects, rather than using baking soda, I'm using Sculptor Mold and I'm pushing it through this metal strainer to get the finer kind of powder. I think it's like a plastery kind of powder. And I'm just going to attach that using some Mod Podge. You could use PVA. I just had Mod Podge on hand, so I'm using that and then sprinkling it and pressing that onto the surface. Helps make a nice powdery, dusty surface texture to some of these snow areas. After all the snow effects are in, I'll use some spray matte varnish to help seal it into the surface a bit more. The pieces are all ready for the table or your online games. It partners well with some fog effects to really sell that icy atmosphere. You can see how to create some of those fog effects in another video I've got on the channel. I love how you can arrange these pieces to make interesting compositions for your online games. This diorama technique could also be expanded to other locations like dungeons or caves or sewers, and I think I just like the idea of grabbing that piece of terrain and slapping it on the table, and it has everything there to set the tone for that location. I think if I was going to expand on this set, I would make some adjoining cave tiles that I can sit around the edges of these diorama pieces. Well, thanks for watching, and if you do like the video, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I'll be sure to notify you personally when new videos come out on the channel. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Anyway, I'll see you next time on the next Atmoseeker. Let's create and inspire. See you later.